welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to learn how to make this beautiful cutout dress. It's a Pinterest inspired design that a client of mine presented to me to recreate. So after looking at the inspo, I was definitely going to give myself a challenge to come up with my version. Of course, changing the stitches, I wanted a textured stitch and I managed to come up with this. And let me know in the comment section how you like my version, or did I do a good job? So for the materials, I used this white color. It's off-white, and I used, this is the name of the yarn, it's Robin. And the fact that my client wanted a dense texture, I went for acrylic yarn because it was going to give me that look that I was going for. So I used this brand in off-white, and I used approximately 9 to 10 balls, literally a full packet of yarn to make the whole dress. The other thing that you will need is a 4mm crochet hook. You will need a darning needle to weave in your ends because we're going to do a lot of joining. And then you also need a pair of scissors to cut off your loose ends, and then some stitch markers. This is key because we're going to make this project while measuring. And I'm going to be very specific when it comes to the measurements that you need to consider. Another thing that you have to take note of in this tutorial, I learned as I went into the project. So if you hear me adjusting the instructions a little bit, it's because I kept switching the construction to suit what was best. But in the end, if you follow these instructions, rest assured you're going to have a beautiful dress like mine. So if you would like the written pattern, it's already available on all my online shops, and I'll be leaving the link on the screen as well as the description box below. So let's get started. So I'm going to start off with a slip knot, and I'm going to make a chain that is half of my waistline circumference, or the waistline circumference of the client that I'm making for. So her waistline is 26 inches and divided by 2, that is 13 inches. And I'm going to make a chain of 13 inches, but I'm going to make sure that this chain is multiple of 2. All right, so I'm going to take a measurement, and we're starting off with the upper part of the dress, and then we shall go on to the skirt bit. So I've started off with a chain of 50, and this stretches to 13 inches, as you can see here. So make sure your chain can stretch to half of your waistline circumference, and this should be an even number. So I've started with a chain of 50. So you're going to go into the second chain from the hook, which is this one. You count this one, and now the second one from the hook. You're going to go in there with a single crochet and a double crochet, all in the same chain. Another thing that I forgot to mention was you should make sure that your foundation chain is not very tight, because we're going to go back and work into it. So after this, you're going to skip over one stitch, one chain, and then into the next chain you're going to place one single and one double. So this pattern is explained in the US terms. Skip one chain, one single, one double into the next. Skip one chain, into the next chain, one single and one double. So we're going to repeat that all the way across until we make it to the end of the row, and I'll show you how to wind up. All right, so we are coming to the end of the row, and I'm placing one single and one double into this chain, and then you're going to skip over the second last chain, and into the last one you're only going to place one single crochet. So go into the last chain with a single crochet. So this is how our first row is going to look like. Now we're going onto our second row, and this is going to be the repeat row. You're going to make a chain of 1 and turn your work. In the very first single crochet, you're going to go in there with 1 single crochet and 1 double crochet. Skip over the next stitch, and into the next single you're going to place 1 single and 1 double. So continue to do this. Skip over the double crochet, and into the next single you're going to place 1 single and 1 double. Skip the next double crochet, into the next single crochet, 1 single, 1 double. Keep repeating that across, and I will meet you towards the end of row 2 and show you how to wind up your row. So the texture will keep building, and once the project grows, you will see a very beautiful texture forming. So we're coming to the end of row 2, and I have a total of 2 stitches left, the double crochet and the last single crochet. So you're going to skip over the double crochet, and into the last single crochet you're only going to place 1 single crochet there, and that marks the end of row 2. This is what your work will look like. Now we're going on to row 3, and we're basically going to repeat row 2 again and again. So you just make a chain of 1 and turn your work. Into the first single crochet, place a single and a double. Skip the next double crochet. Into the next single you're going to place 1 single, 1 double, and you're going to repeat that all the way across until you have 2 stitches left. And you will skip over the second last double crochet and go into the last single crochet with a single crochet. And that's the repeat row, row 2. Repeat row 2 again and again, and keep building your panel until this measures from your waistline all the way to the underbust. So we are growing this length right now. Keep growing it until it can go all the way from the waistline to the underbust, and then we shall start a different shaping for our piece. Alright, so I'm coming to the end of this row, and I have a total of 20 rows, and this gives me a total of 6 inches, as you can see here. So that's from the waistline all the way to the underbust. Make as many rows as you need to run from your waistline all the way to your underbust. Now at this point we are going to do something different. You're going to get a stitch marker. You're going to fold over your panel into half, just like this, and then you're going to locate the middle stitch, and that should be a single crochet stitch. You're going to place a stitch marker there, and then you're going to get another stitch marker. So your second stitch marker is going to mark the exact middle of the front side of the panel, because this side is going to have the increase that creates coverage for the bust. So you're going to get one of the panels and fold it into half, just like this, and then you're going to mark another single crochet in the middle of one side of the panels. So you can see this one here. So at this point we shall be increasing in order to create coverage for the bust. Remember, this is waist. We consider this panel to be half of the waist circumference. So now we are going to remove this one. This one is no longer needed, the one in the middle of the panel. Our increase point is only going to be at this point to create accommodation for the bust, one of the breasts, because this is a half dress. So for the next row, which is row 21 or whatever row that you're at this point, you're going to make a chain of 1, and we're going to work our stitch as usual until we get to the stitch marker. So 1 single, 1 double into the first stitch, skip the next stitch, 1 single, 1 double into the next single crochet, skip the next stitch, 1 single and 1 double into the next stitch. So you're going to do that all the way across until you get to this stitch marker. Alright, so we've reached the stitch marker. So remember, the stitch marker is in a single crochet where we would have placed 1 single and 1 double. So we're going to skip over this stitch here, the next stitch, and into the stitch that had the stitch marker you're going to place 1 single, 1 double and 1 single crochet, all in the same stitch. And then into the you're going to skip over the next stitch, and into the next we're going to place 1 double, 1 single and 1 double, all in the same stitch. So here we placed 1 single, 1 double and 1 single. So into that third stitch of the very first increase, that's where you're going to place your stitch marker. And then now we have the 3 stitches that we just placed: a double, a single and a double. So you're now going to skip the next stitch and work your stitch normally. Until the end of the row. So at the end, into the last stitch, you just place 1 single crochet, just like we've been doing for the previous rows. We haven't yet started seeing the change here, but as we keep working our rows, we shall see the increase that is supposed to accommodate the bust. So I think I'm going to mark this row as the very first row of increase when it comes to the bust shaping. This one here at row 21. So I'm going on to my next row. I'm going to make a chain of 1 and turn my work. Into the first stitch, you're going to place 1 single, 1 double, skip the next stitch, into the next, one single, one double, skip the next stitch, into the next, one single, one double. So this is just plain until you get to the stitch with a stitch marker where we're supposed to create an increase. But we're going to create the increase every other row. So that means when you get to the stitch marker this time, you're just going to remove it and skip the next stitch and place one single and one double. And then you're going to place your stitch marker into the single crochet. And then go on with your stitch as usual until the end of the row. So this is a non-increase row. This is just a plain row, and I'll meet you back at the end of the row. So we've come to the end of the row, and I'm skipping my second last stitch, and into the last I'm placing a single crochet just like that. And then for the next row, which is row 3 for the bust shaping, or at this point I'm at row 23 if I'm to count from the very beginning, but from this point where we started the bust shaping, I'm at row 3. So I'm going to make a chain of 1, turn my work into the very first stitch, single crochet, double, and skip the next stitch, single crochet, double. So you're going to work your stitch until you get to the stitch marker, and we're going to create our increase at that point. This time round, this is the increase row. So as I had mentioned, we're going to increase every other row. We make one plain row and one row of increase. Keep alternating between the two. Alright, so we've reached the stitch marker. You're going to remove it. So you're going to skip over the next stitch, and into the stitch that had the stitch marker, you're going to place one single, one double, and one single. And into that last single crochet, you're going to place a stitch marker. And then skip the next stitch, and into the next you're going to place one double, one single, and one double, all in the same stitch. So these two stitches get 3 stitches instead of 2 for the original pattern. And then you're going to continue your pattern as usual. Skip the next, one single, one double into the next, skip the next stitch, sorry, one single and one double into the same stitch, skip the next stitch, and one single, one double into the same stitch, skip the next stitch, and one single, one double into the same stitch, and keep working until you get to the end of the row where you will skip the second last stitch, and into the last you're only going to place a single crochet. Okay, so this is what we have so far. You can see how the bulge is shaping out. This is to create the bust coverage. If you're to see something like this, just leave it at that, because it's supposed to help us cover the bust. So we're going to go ahead and keep alternating between the 2 rows until this length is half of your bust circumference. So the bust circumference that I am considering is 36. So this should stretch to 18 inches. Slightly, don't overstretch. So I'm going to keep repeating the increase row, the one that increases at this point, and the plain row. So now that this is an increase row, the next row is going to be a plain row of just plain stitches, but making sure that I maintain the stitch marker in the same exact stitch for the plain row of no increase. So make sure you don't lose track of where to increase from. So I'm going to keep working until this can slightly stretch to half of bust circumference, which is 18 inches for my case, and then I'll meet you back when I'm at that point. Okay guys, so I kept repeating the increase row and the non-increase row. So at the moment I have a total of 31 rows, and you can see where the increase side is. You can see what's going on. We're increasing along this line at the front of our panel, and now you're going to take a measurement across. Make sure this can stretch to half of your bust. You can see that this can stretch slightly to half of my bust, but it can even go beyond. You can see to 20, but half of the bust circumference that I am considering is 18 inches. So I'm just going to give it a slight stretch, and then also keep in mind that you don't want to go past your armpit. That's a must, because we have to do the shoulder shaping, the sleeve shaping actually. So you're going to take this measurement here while stretching to your half of the bust, and then locate the exact middle of the piece. So since I have 18, you're going to divide that number by 2. So you're going to locate where the 9 inches is, and you're going to mark that point with a stitch marker. So this point I can remove this stitch marker because I'm no longer increasing. I've gotten half of the bust circumference, and then at this point you should have quarter of the bust and quarter on this side. So you can see this stretches to 9 inches, which is quarter of the bust circumference, and then also this side. So you're going to fold over your work along this line where you've placed the stitch marker, and then you're going to have something that looks like this. Alright, so another thing that I'm going to do is to remove this stitch marker that marked the beginning of the increase rows or the bust shaping. So I'm going to fold over my work depending on where I want my sleeve to be. My client wants her sleeve to be on the right side, so I'm going to fold along this line, but bringing this panel that doesn't have the bust increases to this side, so that the front side of my work is on this side, because I want to do the shaping of the half of the dress on the right side. So this is what I'm going to do, and then we're going to go ahead and keep working our rows, but this time round while shaping the sleeves. So we're going to work short rows. We're going to first work this half of our piece until we get to the top of the shoulder, as you'll see later on. So my main aim is to have a total of about 5 inches in order to get to the shoulder. So I'm going to work the short rows as I'm going to show you. You're going to make a chain of 1 and turn your work. This time round, no more increasing. So you're going to work your stitch as usual until you get to the stitch marker that you just placed in the middle of the panel. No more increasing at this point. You're just going to work across following the stitch pattern that we originally had. So we're coming to the end here, and you're going to just make a single crochet into the stitch that would have gotten a single crochet and a double, the one right before this one, the one with a stitch marker. And then from here you're going to make a chain of 1 and turn your work. You're going to make until you have 1 inch to the top of your shoulder, and then I'll meet you back and we do some neckline shaping, because the fact that we've first worked on this side that has the increase, that means we are working the front side of our piece, and then we shall go to the back side and also lift it up, and then we shall join along the shoulder seam. So keep working until you have 1 inch less from your shoulder, from the top of your shoulder. Alright, so we are back, and my main aim is to have a total of 5 inches at this point. At the moment I'm at about 4.3, but I'm going to make 1 more inch or half an inch to get to 5 inches, or at least 5.3 inches. So you should end your row on the inner side, this side, not on the outer edge. And now you're going to split this into half. You're going to split this panel into half, and then you mark the single crochet at the middle point, just like that. So what we are trying to do right now is to create that pull neck shaping. So you're going to make a chain of 1 and single crochet, double crochet into the first stitch, and continue to create your pattern until you get to the stitch, the stitch with the stitch marker. This is a very short distance, so I'm going to record it on camera. All right. So the stitch with the stitch marker, I'm going to just remove it, and then into that stitch that had the stitch marker, I'm going to place only 1 single crochet. Then make a chain of 1 and turn my work. These are still short rows to create the neckline shaping. So into the first stitch, I'm going to place 1 single and 1 double, and then skip 1 stitch, single and double into the next stitch, and you're going to continue until the end of the row. The only difference here is the rows are much shorter than what we had before. Okay, so I'm ending with a single crochet into the very last stitch, and then make a chain of 1, turn your work, and single and double into the first stitch, and then continue to skip 1 stitch, single and double into the next until the end of the row. And make sure you always end your row with a single crochet into the last stitch. All right. So I'm going to do this. I think this is just enough. I just wanted to create a shaping for the neckline, because you're going to do something different for the neckline. But at the moment I have a total of around 5 inches for this part. As you can see here, this is going to be your sleeve opening, by the way. So we're going to make a chain of 1 and cut our yarn, pull through. You're going to leave this part at this. This is the side with the increases for the bust. So we're going to go onto the opposite side, which is this part that we left behind, and you're going to make sure that you're working in the opposite direction of the previous row, and you're going to remove this stitch marker here. Remove your stitch marker from here. The stitch marker was here, so I'm going to attach my yarn in the single crochet after the stitch that had the stitch marker, and then into that very stitch I'm going to make 1 single crochet and 1 double crochet. So this marks this is row 1 on the opposite side. So you're going to continue to work your pattern. This time round, all we are going to do is to work plain rows until we balance what we have on the opposite side. So let's see, we have a total of 13 rows before we did the neckline shaping. So I'm going to make sure that I have a total of 13 rows on this side, and then I'll be back to show you what to do next. So just do the same exact number of rows that you did before the neckline shaping for the first panel. So remember, we originally had a big panel that created increases, and then we split the panel into 2. So we are done with the first half, and now we are working the second half. So let me work a few rows in and I'll show you what I'll have. So we are coming to the end of row 1. Let me finish it up and explain a few things. So I'm ending with a single crochet into the last stitch. So you're just going to work back and forth here without increasing or decreasing. So you're going to have an opening, and that is the sleeve opening of our piece. Alright guys, this is what we have at the moment. This is the side of the increase that creates the bust coverage. Then this is the very first side that we worked. On the second side I did until this level, and then I started working on only one side. I don't know how this is going to play out eventually, but I think I'm just trusting the process, and I extended this so that it can literally wrap around the shoulder to the opposite side. So we have something that looks like this, and then I've cut my yarn at this point, and I'm going to sew the 2 pieces together. So we're going to sew this part together to create a seam line. I wish it was at the top of the piece, but I've decided to just have it like this. I'm going to just make sure that it's neat enough. So just make sure that this can wrap around your shoulder. And this is going to automatically create, it's going to create a sleeve opening. It's going to create the sleeve of our dress. So I'm just using a simple whip stitch. I think this is called the whip stitch. Just going into stitch to stitch, and you should make sure that you have the same exact number of stitches on both panels, so that you just join stitch to stitch until the end of the row. And this is what we have. So this is what we have at the front of our work. This is what it looks like, and this has created an opening for our sleeve to be attached. So let's go onto the sleeve. Okay, so for my sleeve opening, I have approximately 7 inches for the sleeve opening, and that means it's a total of 14 inches because we are considering this side and the other side. But when I stretch it, I have about maybe around 9 inches. So this is how my sleeve looks like. This is the front side with the increases, and then this is the back side that is flat. As you can see, you're going to have some sort of protruding effect on your piece, and then this is the part that goes around the shoulder. So let's go onto our sleeve and see how to construct it. Okay, so for the sleeve, I'm going to start off with a chain of 12. And I'm going to recommend a number of chains on the screen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So I have my 12 chains, and into the second chain from the hook, I'm going to place a single crochet and a double crochet. And then skip 1 stitch into the next chain, single crochet and double crochet. So now we already know how to work our pattern. Skip 1 stitch into the next stitch, single crochet and double crochet. So keep doing this all the way across. Okay, so when you have 2 chains left, you're going to skip this one and into the last one. Okay, so in the very last stitch, you only place 1 single crochet. So we're going onto row 2, which is going to be an increase row. You're going to make a chain of 1 and turn your work. Into the very first stitch, you're going to go in there with 1 single crochet, 1 double crochet, and 1 more single crochet, all in the same stitch. And then skip the next stitch, and into the next you're going to place 1 double crochet, 1 single crochet, and 1 more double crochet, all in the same stitch. So that's how we create an increase at the beginning of the row. Skip the next stitch and single crochet, double crochet into the next, this one. Skip the next stitch, single and double into the next stitch. Skip the next stitch, and into the second last stitch you're going to single crochet and then double crochet into the same stitch, and skip the second last stitch, and into the last you're going to place 1 single crochet, 1 double crochet, and another single crochet. And that's how we increase at the end of the row. So this is our increase row. We're going to increase after 2 rows. So the next 2 rows are plain rows. So you're going to make a chain of 1 and turn your work. Into the very first stitch, you're going to place 1 single and 1 double, and skip the next stitch, 1 single, 1 double into the next chain. Skip 1 stitch into the next stitch, 1 single, 1 double, skip 1 into the next, 1 single, 1 double, skip 1 stitch into the next, 1 single and 1 double. So keep doing that all the way across until you have a total of 2 stitches left on your row. So you have your 2 stitches, this one and this one. So you're going to skip over the second last one, and into the last you're going to only place 1 single crochet because this is a non-increase row. So we're going on to the next row, which is row 4, and row 4 is still a non-increase row. So you're going to repeat the same exact process for row 3. Chain 1 and turn, 1 single, 1 double into the first stitch. Skip 1 stitch, 1 single, 1 double into the next stitch. Skip the next stitch, 1 single, 1 double into the next stitch. So you should notice that for this pattern, we place the stitches into the single crochet stitches of the previous row. The stitches are placed in the single crochet stitches of the previous row, or the shorter stitches. And then you're going to repeat until you have 2 stitches left on your row. Skip the second last one, and into the last one you're going to place a single crochet because it's a non-increase row. So we're going to repeat rows 2, 3 and 4. Keep repeating rows 2, 3 and 4 because row 2 was the increase row, and then 3 and 4 are the plain rows of no increase. So we're going to just keep repeating rows 2 to 4 again and again, and you'll see your work starting to spread out. And as we spread out, we are looking out for our bicep circumference when stretched at the base of our panel. So don't forget, you make a chain of 1 and turn your work. So since this row is supposed to be an increase row, you're going to go into the first stitch with a single, a double, and then a single into the same stitch. Skip the next stitch, and into the next you're going to place a double, a single, and a double. So that's how we increase at the beginning of the row. And then skip the next stitch, a single and a double into the next. Skip the next stitch, single and double into the next, and keep doing this until you have 2 stitches left on your row. I'm just re-demonstrating the increase row so that you don't get it wrong. So when you have 2 stitches left, you're going to skip over the second last one, and into the last, since this is an increase row, you're going to place 1 single, 1 double, and another single crochet. And just like that, we are done with our increase row. So you're going to make 2 rows of plain without any increases, and then you go back to the increase row. You're going to keep doing this until you have the base of your panel measure your bicep circumference. So for me, I have already done mine. I've already done my sleeve, and let me introduce it here. So you can see the top where my 12 chains are, this is the point, and we kept increasing until the bicep circumference of my client is 26, I believe. So I am considering 13 inches when stretched because this is supposed to be a fitted sleeve. So you can see without stretching we're at 12, and when we stretch we can get to the 13 inches or even beyond, but I'm very sure the arm is going to comfortably sit within this measurement. And just make sure you don't over make this distance so long. If you feel like it's quite long, actually if you get to the level of about 8 inches long after the increases, then you may consider just making a chain to accommodate the arm circumference. Otherwise you don't want this to go so long because it's supposed to literally sit in this space. So make sure whatever you do, you don't really overgo beyond what you already created on this piece, on the front and back piece of the dress, because this sleeve is supposed to sit in this space, as you'll see later on. So I increased, let me see how many rows that I ended up doing. You see, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11, and I think I did 24 rows of increase, and then I continued to work until I got to the elbow. Now when it comes to that part, I just did plain rows of no increases. That's why you're seeing a straight edge. The moment I got to the level where I feel like this is the arm circumference that I wanted, then I stopped increasing and just did plain rows in order to get a flat edge on this side and this side. So that's what we have for now, and at this point I'm at the elbow, but I'll get back to this later on. I want to first attach this piece, the sleeve, onto the sleeve opening, so that we get the bigger picture of how our piece looks like. All right, now to attach my pieces together, I'm going to first locate the topmost part of my sleeve opening. I'm going to balance my work and make sure I get the topmost part of my sleeve opening, and I'm going to attach it into the middle part of the foundation chain of my sleeve. So I'm going to first attach one side, so one thing that you have to do is, this is not a gamble, not much of a gamble, but you're going to find the best way to distribute these stitches. We're going to go first into the topmost part of the sleeve, but make sure you don't distort the shape. So just like that, we are done with this part. Now I'm going to find the best way to attach this length here onto this length. You can see this is quite long, so I want to distribute it into this space here. So at some point I'll have to maybe distribute 2 rows of this one onto this one, but I'm going to find the best way possible. So one, and I don't have any calculation that I am following, but I'm just eyeballing to make sure that this piece comfortably fits into the sleeve opening that we created. Okay, so you can see we still have a long way to go, especially on the sleeve. Still have some long distance, but I'm going to try my best to distribute these stitches. Okay, so you can see what we have now. I've marked this point where I stopped the increases, so that is supposed to be the base of the sleeve. So I'm still going on to attach these last stitches towards the stitch marker that marked the end of the increases, and then I'm going to go past the stitch marker just like this, and then start working the opposite side. So let's see what we have at the moment. Yeah, I think this is fine. I think this is perfect. Okay, Oh my god, this looks good. So let's flip our work over to the opposite side and we join the same exact way. So you can come from the top. I left behind a tail and I'm going to go ahead and almost just do the same exact process that I did on the first side. So you first go past the flat edge of the sleeve and then you start distributing the stitches. Accordingly, just find the best way possible to attach your sleeve onto the sleeve opening. Okay, so you can see I'm attaching the very last space. And I think I'm pleased with the joining of the sleeve. From here I will just make a knot at this point just to secure my yarn. I can weave these in later on, but for now I'm going to just make a knot, and I can now remove the stitch marker because this part is now joined up to the point where we stopped the increases for the sleeve. So guys, look at what we have right now. I'm very happy. I'm very happy. I hope this fits well on the client, but we are going to try it on the dummy and we see what we have at the moment, and then we can go ahead and finish up our sleeve because the sleeve is not supposed to be tight. Apparently we're supposed to create some decreases for it. I don't know whether I just do the same exact process of 2 rows in between and the decrease row, but yeah, I'm going to teach you how to do that in a bit. Alright, so when it comes to the sleeve, we're going to create some decreases so that when the sleeve gets to this level, it's not this big. As you can see, this is a very big circumference. We want the sleeve to be a bit fitted around the wrist, but at this point it's still a bit wide. So this is at the level of the elbow. Now we're going to start creating some decreases. As you can see, once you get past the elbow, your hand starts decreasing in size towards the wrist. So to do that, once you get to your elbow, we're going to create a decrease after 2 rows for about 3 times, and then we shall maintain the stitches 3 to 5 times. So you're going to get a stitch marker and fold your sleeve in 2/2 and locate a single crochet, any single crochet around the middle point, and mark it. And then you're going to start, this will be a decrease row, so chain 1 and turn your work. I have a marker here. This is at the point of the elbow. So my very first row of decrease, I'm going to place 1 single and 1 double into the first stitch as usual, and then skip the next stitch, 1 single, 1 double into the next, skip the next stitch, 1 single, 1 double into the next. So you're going to repeat the pattern until you're almost at the stitch marker in the middle of the sleeve, and then I'll show you how to decrease. All right, so we are 3 stitches away from the stitch marker. So you're going to skip over the next double crochet, and into the single crochet you're going to place a single crochet, and then you're going to remove the stitch marker, and then you're going to skip over the double crochet and place a double crochet into the next single crochet. So that way we have decreased at this point, and then you're going to skip over the next double crochet and single crochet, double crochet into the next stitch. So we are going on with our pattern as usual, but we have created a decrease at this point here in the middle of the sleeve. So go all the way across and end your row as usual with a single crochet into the last stitch. So we're coming to the end of the decrease row, and you're going to skip over the double crochet and into the last single crochet you're going to place a single crochet. So that's how we end the decrease row, just like all the other rows. So you're going to do 2 rows of no decrease, just plain rows, and then fold over your work, locate the middle single crochet just like we did here, and then you create another decrease row, and then do 2 rows of plain, and then create another decrease row. So you'll see your work trying to narrow down so that it can create a good fitting along the smaller part of your hand. So I'm going to go ahead and keep working 1 decrease row and 2 rows of plain until I get a fitting that is suitable for my hand or my client's hand, and then I'll be back to let you know how many rows that I ended up doing in order to get the perfect fitting for my sleeve. And then you can decide for yourself whether to do the same or do more or less depending on your arm length and also your arm size. Alright guys, as you can see, I've done my decrease rows, and you can see the slanting effect, the decreases that are creating the shaping for the lower part of the sleeve. So I did about 4 to 5 increases in between here, and at that point I have about 4 inches across without stretching. I think this is just fine. I don't want to make it so small around the wrist, and so I'm going to just keep pushing until I get the length of the sleeve that I want. My client's sleeve length from the top of the shoulder all the way down is 26 inches, so I'm putting 26 at this top corner, and that means I still have to work my pattern for a total of 6 more inches in order to get that length right. So let me keep working and get my length of the sleeve. So I'm going to just now keep working plain rows back and forth without any decreases, because we've created the decreases at this point from this stitch marker all the way down. So you can see that subtle decrease. So let me keep working until I get my sleeve length, and then I'll be back to show you what to do next. So once you get your desired sleeve length, mine is 26 inches, you're going to remove the stitch marker, any stitch markers that may be here, and you're going to start joining the sleeve. At the bottom of the sleeve, you're going to join this opening. So you're going to get your darning needle and a single strand of yarn, and you're going to go into these ridges at the base of the rows. and start joining the base of the sleeve. So this time around I am using a mattress stitch so that we have a very neat finish under the sleeve. Alright, so after joining the lower part of the sleeve all the way to the end, so for the back up you're going to start off with a slip knot and you're going to make a chain of 4. 1, 2, 3 and 4, and into the second chain from the hook you're going to go in there with 1 single crochet and 1 double crochet, and then skip the second last stitch and go into the last chain with 1 single crochet, just like that. And then you're going to make a chain of 1, turn your work, and into the very first stitch you're going to go in there with 1 single crochet, 1 double crochet into the same stitch, and then 1 single crochet into the same stitch. So those are 3 stitches into the first stitch. And then into the second one you're going to skip over this one and go into the last with 1 double crochet, 1 single crochet and another double crochet, and just like that row 2 is done. So the back up is worked from the top, that's why this is a very narrow space, and we're going to keep widening it as we go down. So let's go on to row 3. You're going to make a chain of 1, turn your work, and into the very first stitch, at the end of row 2 you have to put 1 single crochet, 1 double crochet and another single crochet. Don't forget that it's supposed to be 3 stitches into the last. Then for row 3 you're going to make a chain of 1 and turn your work. Into the first stitch you're going to place 1 single crochet, 1 double crochet, and then skip the next stitch. Into the next you're going to place a single and a double, and then skip the next stitch, single, double into the next. So this is a non-increase row. So after this you're going to skip over the second last stitch, and into the last you're going to place a single crochet. So we're going to do that one more time. Chain 1, turn your work, into the first stitch, single, double, skip the next stitch, single and double into the next, skip the next, single, double, and then skip the next stitch and single crochet into the last stitch. So this is row 4. For row 5 you're going to create an increase. You're going to chain 1 and turn your work. Into the first stitch you're going to place a single, a double and a single into the same stitch. Then skip the next stitch. Into the next you're going to place a double, a single and a double, and then skip the next stitch, single and double into the next. Then skip the next stitch, and into the last one you're going to place 1 single, 1 double and 1 single. So this marks the end of row 5. Alright, now for row 6 you're going to make a chain of 1, turn your work. Into the first stitch you're going to place a single and a double. This is a non-increase row. Then skip 1 stitch. Into the next, single and double, skip 1 stitch, single and double into the next, skip one stitch, single and double into the next, skip one stitch, single, double into the next, and then skip the second last stitch, and into the last you're going to place a single crochet. So this is row 6. It's a non-increase row. Row 7, you're going to make a chain of 1 and repeat row 6. So we're basically repeating rows 5 to 7. So that means for row 8, you're going to repeat row 5, row 9, you repeat row 6, row 10, you repeat row 7, and keep working that until you have enough coverage for your bra cup. Alright guys, so I repeated rows, I did the repeat rows again and again until I got to a point where the base of my panel is approximately quarter of the bust circumference. So you can see it's about 1 inch less, but when stretched it can get to the 9, which is quarter of the bust circumference that I am making for. So you don't want to make it so long or all the way to quarter of the bust circumference, but you're going to make it long enough so that it's at least 1 inch less without stretching, so that when it stretches it gets to quarter of the bust circumference. Now from here you're going to just make a chain of 1 and make some plain rows. You're just going to continue to make about I think I'm going to make a total of 3 rows of just plain rows of the pattern without any increases. But at this point you're going to determine how many rows that you'll need for yourself, either more or less than 3 depending on the coverage that you're going for. So let me make my 3 rows of plain and I'll be back to show you what my piece looks like. All right, so I'm through with my 3 rows, and you can continue with the plain rows for as long as you wish, depending on the coverage that you want for your bra cup. I still feel like this is quite short, but I'll make the adjustments when my model comes around for fitting, or I can just go ahead and make 2 more rows to make it a total of 5 instead of 3, just to be on a safe side, because I feel like this is still a bit short, this distance here for the bra cup. So let me go ahead and make 2 more rows, and then I'll be back. You're going to introduce your bra cup, and then you're going to locate the level at which you want to put your drawstring, and this drawstring is going to be under the bust. It's going to pass through the base of the bra cup all the way to this side and onto the back side of this piece. So you're going to get your yarn and make a slip knot and make a very long chain that can wrap around the underbust and beyond, because we need to tie it at the back. So you're going to just make a very long chain that's beyond your underbust measurement. So once you get a long enough chain, you're going to get your darning needle and thread your chain into the darning needle. And now you're going to place your bra cup like this, and you're going to go in and out of a few stitches at the base of the bra cup. Just like that. And this is going to gather the bra cup and also give it some sort of shaping. And then you're going to locate the level through which you want to put this drawstring. So for me, it's at this level, somewhere around here. And this is about 7 inches from the top of this piece on this side. So I'm going to go ahead and put my drawstring through this level all the way to the back of the piece. So you see what I'm doing? So continue to do this. Make sure you're along the same row. Actually, this is a bit off, it went a bit down. Make sure you have a straight line. All the way to the back of your piece. And once you make it to the back, you're going to remove your darning needle, and let's see what we have now. This is what it's going to look like at the front. just like this. And then when it comes to the back, we have an open back on one of the sides of our dress, and this is going to wrap around your underbust, and it's going to make a knot at the back of the dress like this. So you're going to get rid of the loose ends. Okay, so this is what we have at the moment, and we're going to also create a strap on top of the backup, and then we go to the neckline shaping. So turn your work to the front side. And you're going to attach your yarn on top of the backup. And then single crochet still on top of the backup and make a long chain of about 80. So I ended up doing a total of 100 instead of 80, and this is what your chain should look like. You're going to make a chain of 1 and cut your yarn, pull through, and get rid of the excess yarn at the end of the strand. So here you're going to go ahead and get rid of the loose ends at this point. Okay. So this is what we have for the top part of our dress. We shall come back to the neckline shaping, but this is what we have. And then when it comes to the back, you've already seen the back is open. All right, so for the neckline shaping, we're going to start off with a chain of 50, actually 70. Let's make a chain of 70. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have my chain of 70, and now I'm going to work across this curve all the way to this side. So to do that, I'm going to insert my hook into the very first stitch, and I'm going to single crochet and double crochet. Skip the next stitch, single crochet, double crochet. So we are maintaining the Suzette stitch. Skip one stitch, single crochet, double crochet, go all the way across. All right, so when you get to this level, you're going to go across this part with a Suzette stitch still. So you're going to skip over the next stitch and go along the side with one single crochet, one double crochet. Skip the next row and into the next, one single and one double. Skip the next row and into the next row, you're going to place one single and one double. Find the best way to work the Suzette stitch along the rows of the shoulder extension of your piece. Just make sure you evenly distribute the stitches. Until you make it all the way to the back side, and you're going to continue working the Suzette stitch until the end of the row. All right, so we've come to the end of the row, and I'm skipping the second last stitch, and into the last I'm going to place a single crochet. So I'm going to mark this row as the very first row of the neckline shaping, and we shall place a strap at this point later on. So now we're going to keep working back and forth, working the Suzette stitch just like we've been doing for the body of the piece, and we are not going to create any increases or decreases. So just make a chain of one and work your stitch pattern, single crochet and double crochet into the first stitch, skip the next stitch, single and double, skip the next stitch, single and double into the next, and you're going to repeat that all the way across, not forgetting that you end with one single crochet into the very last stitch. So just keep working until you get the thickness of the band that's going to sit around the neck. So we are maintaining the texture of the Suzette stitch. Alright, so you're going to work your stitch pattern until you get to the extension chain. This is a strap, so you work until this point. So let's see. Okay, so once you get to the chain here, you're going to continue with the Suzette stitch for a total of about 8 groups of 2 double crochets. So let's see. You're going to skip over the next chain and single crochet, double crochet into the same chain, skip the next stitch, single crochet and double into the same chain, skip the next stitch, single and double. So you're going to do that until you have about 8 groups of the Suzette stitch. So far we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is going to depend on how long you want this band to wrap around your neck. So we have let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is the 7th and then the 8th. All right, so once you have that, you're going to skip over the next chain, and into the next you're only going to place 1 single crochet, and then you're going to make a chain of 1 and turn your work. And now you're going to work all the way across until the end, working your Suzette stitch pattern without any increases or decreases. And you're just going to keep repeating the plain row until you get the band, the thickness of the band that you want around your neck. So you can see the thickness is already showing. I think I'm going to do just about 3 rows, and this is the second one. I want a total of 3 rows for the neck band. I don't want it to be so thick. So after this row, I'll work 1 more row and I'll be back to show you what to do next. Alright, so once you get the thickness of the neck band that you want, for me I've done a total of 3 rows, and that's the thickness that I've got. And now I'm going to go ahead and make a chain that is the same length as this chain that we started the neck band with. So I'm going to just estimate and make sure the chain is almost the same length. So you can see, once you get the same length, same for you to chain 1. You're going to cut your yarn, and then you can cut off the excess. And just like that, we have this part finished, and we're going to get our yarn and create the same exact straps at the back of the neck shaping. So you're going to make a chain of about 75. And after a chain of 75, or whatever number of chains that you decide to make for this part, it can be shorter or longer depending on your preference, we are going to single crochet across the 3 rows that we just placed for the neck band. This is on the back side. Just make a single crochet row of some sort, single crochet across the 3 rows, and then make the same exact number of chains that you just made here. So since I have a total of 75, I'm going to go ahead and make a total of 75 chains. Alright, so we are done with this, and you're going to make a chain of 1 and cut your yarn, and then you're going to get rid of the excess yarn by cutting off the excess strands at the end of the straps. So you're going to have these 2 straps at the back of the neck, and then these 2 straps coming from the front of the neck, and these ones are going to tie together at the back. So from here, this part is finished. And then another thing is, once you take this to the back, you can actually hold the strap that comes from the back up together with the 2 that come from the neckband, and then you tie them all at once at the back of the dress. So one side has 3 straps and one side has 2 straps, and then you just make a knot there, and this is what you're going to have. Alright guys, I'm going to do a small demonstration for the skirt so that I just give you the instructions to follow, and then you will do the actual skirt. So now that we are done with the upper part of the dress, we are now going to go onto the lower part, and the lower part is made of the skirt. So for the skirt, you're going to make a chain. You're going to start off with a slip knot, and you're going to make a chain that can stretch to your hip circumference. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So you're going to make sure that this chain is an even number. Alright, so I have a total of 60 chains, and this is just a demonstration of how to work the stitch at the base of our dress. So for my actual piece, I did a total of 140 chains, but for this sample, I have a total of 60 chains. And once you get your hip circumference when stretched, you're going to join in the round. You're going to make sure that your chain is not twisted, and you're going to slip stitch into the very first chain, just like that. Now you've created a ring. Remember, it's going to be much bigger for the actual body. This is just a demonstration. So you're going to make a chain of 1, and into that very chain, you're going to go in there with 1 single crochet and 1 double crochet. And by now you know how the stitch goes. So skip over 1 chain and into the next, 1 single crochet, 1 double crochet. Skip the next chain and into the next, you're going to place 1 single and 1 double. Skip 1 chain, 1 single and 1 double into the next chain. So you're going to do that all the way around, and I'll meet you back towards the end of the round. Alright, we're coming to the end of round 1, and I'm placing a single and a double into the second last chain. Now I have only 1 chain left, as you can see here. I'm going to skip over it, and into the first single crochet of the round you're going to place a slip stitch. So this is what your round 1 will look like. Now for round 2 you're going to make a chain of 1 and turn your work, and you see that stitch with the slip stitch where the hole is, that one there, you're going to go in there with 1 single crochet and 1 double crochet, just like that, and then skip over the next double crochet. Into the next single crochet you're going to place 1 single and 1 double, skip the next double, single and double into the next single crochet, and you're going to repeat that all the way around. Until you have only 1 stitch left on your row, and I'll show you how to wind up. So you can see the texture taking shape. Alright guys, this is what we have for round 2, and I'm only left with a double crochet stitch, which we are going to skip over and go into the top of the first single crochet of the round with a slip stitch, and that marks the end of round 2. We're going to repeat round 2 again and again until we get the length of the skirt that we want minus 1 inch. So you just make a chain of 1, turn your work into that stitch where we place the slip stitch. We go in there with 1 single and 1 double. Don't forget that. So we are basically repeating round 2 again and again until we get the skirt length that we want minus 1 inch. So since this was just a demonstration, let's go onto the actual skirt and see how things are playing out. And we do the upper shaping of the skirt. The skirt is worked from the bottom all the way to the waistline. So we're building from the base all the way to the waistline. So let's see the actual skirt and see how to do the shaping on the upper part of the skirt. Alright guys, we continued repeating row 2 until we got the length of the skirt that we wanted minus 1 or 2 inches, and those inches are going to create a decrease here. So that means the skirt was worked from the base towards the upper section that's going to be attached onto the piece that we have already done. So once you get 2 inches or 1 inch less than your desired length for the skirt, as you can see, I have about 12.5 and I will decrease until 14 inches. So you're going to get 2 stitch markers. I have mine here, and you're going to mark the stitches on the side of the skirt, and this is the same line, this one at the back where you end your round, and these are going to be the 2 stitches. They should be single crochet stitches where you have placed the stitch markers. So you're going to place 1 on this side and 1 on this side, and then let's see what to do next. We want to kind of decrease this stretch across the last round of the skirt. So into the very first stitch, as usual, you make a chain of 1 and turn your work so that you're working in the opposite direction of the previous round, and then start creating your stitch pattern as usual until you get towards the stitch marker. Alright, so we are almost at our stitch marker, and when you have 3 stitches to the stitch with the stitch marker, as you can see here, you're going to skip over the next stitch, and into the next you're going to place 1 single crochet And then, all right, as I was saying, when you have 3 stitches left, you're going to skip over the next one, and into the next single crochet you're going to only place 1 single crochet, and then remove the stitch marker, skip the next double crochet, and into the single crochet you're going to place a double crochet. So you're going to mark the single crochet, the second last stitch, that one, the single crochet that you just placed in this stitch, and then continue to work your pattern. Skip the next stitch and 1 single, 1 double into the next, skip the next, single, double into the next. So you're going to repeat that until you have 3 stitches to your next stitch marker, which is the decrease point on the opposite side of this one that we just did, the decrease that we just did here. So our main aim here is to create some decreases, but I feel like just making 2 points of decrease is also very subtle and may not be visible. So I think I'm going to get some other stitch markers. Okay, so what I have here is 2 points of decrease. So I'm going to mark another single crochet around this spot. The whole point is to create an even distribution for the decreases, and then 1 on this side. So that means I'll have a total of 4 spots of decreasing, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And since you have already seen how to decrease, once you get to the stitch marker, once you get towards the stitch marker, you create a decrease just like we did for the first one. So I'm going to demonstrate that one more time. I feel like just having 2 spots of decrease is not going to make much of a difference, so that's why I have increased the points of decrease. All right, so we're at this point where we have 3 stitches to the stitch with the stitch marker. So you're going to skip over the next stitch and place a single crochet into the next stitch. Now you have 1 stitch to the stitch marker. So once you place your single crochet here, you're going to mark it with a stitch marker, that single crochet that you just did. Skip the next stitch and double crochet into the next stitch. And when we come back, this will be the new point of decrease for the new round. So after this, you're going to just continue with your stitch pattern, meaning we have decreased at this point also, at this point and at this point. So we're going to continue to create decreases at the points with the stitch markers until we get to the end of the round. And we're going to do this until we have about maybe 3 to 6 rounds of decrease, depending on how small your waist is, because this space was a bit wide because we considered hip circumference. So as we approach the waistline, we should be able to create some decreases so that we don't get a big chunk around our waistline. All right, so we are approaching our next decrease point, and we shall just do the same exact procedure that we've done for the previous 2 decrease points. Make sure you always replace the stitch marker where you want your next decrease for the new round to be. All right, so far we've done this one, this one, this one, and we are left with only one. So let's first get through with this round, and then I'll leave you to repeat the same exact process for the next rounds. All right, so I'm creating my very last decrease for my round, my very first round of decrease. And just like that, you're going to finish off your round as usual, creating your Suzette stitch. So into the last single crochet, you're going to skip over this stitch, and into the next, you're going to place one single and one double, and then skip over the last stitch and slip stitch into the very first single crochet of the round. So this is what we have. You should see your work already kind of curving in, and that's exactly what we want, because we are approaching the waistline, which is basically smaller than the hip circumference. So that way the skirt is going to be shaped perfectly well around our body. So you're going to make a chain of one and turn your work, and we are going to repeat this round again and again until we have about 1 to 2 inches. So I'll let you know how many rounds that I'll have done for my decreases. And remember, you start with the Suzette stitch, one single, one double into the very first stitch to maintain the seam line at the back of the work, and then skip the next stitch, one single, one double. So we have 3 stitches to our stitch marker, or the point of decrease. So I'm going to remove the stitch marker, skip the next, and single crochet into the next, mark that stitch, and then skip the next stitch and double crochet into the next stitch. So that is another decrease. And then skip the next stitch, single crochet and double crochet into the next stitch. So for these middle spots, you're going to just work your stitch as usual, but then you know exactly what to do when it comes to the decrease points. So let me just go ahead and keep working my decrease rounds until I have about 1.5 inches, and then I'll be back to show you how my work will look like at that point. Alright guys, I've done about 5 rounds of decrease, and this has brought me to approximately half of the waistline circumference of my client. So my client's waistline is 26 inches, so you can see we're at about 13 inches, and before we were at 18. So after creating the decreases, I'm at 13 inches. So once you're done with that, you're going to make a chain of 1 and cut your yarn, and you're going to introduce your upper part of the piece. Going to make sure the tail or the seam line is at the back of the skirt, and you're going to locate the middle stitch on this side. So just make sure the seam line is at the back of the skirt, and then locate the side stitch here. Now you're going to count the number of stitches at the base of your upper piece. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Alright guys, I've counted the stitches that I have along this line, and there are a total of 46. So I'm going to divide that number by 2, which is a total of 23. So from this stitch marker on the skirt, I'm going to count 23 stitches. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15 16 17 18 19 20 23 here. And then I am going to grab my darning needle and start attaching from the 23rd chain, or the 23rd stitch that we've counted on the skirt. So from here, just start attaching from here and start attaching stitch to stitch until you attach this upper piece entirely. So just make sure that at this point the lowest part of your upper piece is around the level of your waistline. That's what I can advise. If not, find a way of reducing that length to the level of your waistline. Otherwise, you may not get the perfect fitting that you wanted. So you can see this. We're continuing to join. Alright guys, after attaching the two pieces, it's getting dark outside, but I hope you can see the joining that we have here. So I'm going to go ahead and also attach an elastic strand from this corner to the second corner where the upper part attaches onto this part. I'm going to put an elastic strand on the remaining circumference around the top of the skirt, and then I'll meet you back to show you what that looks like. Alright guys, this is the structure that we have at the moment. I'm going to do some adjustments to the neckline because my client came through and I wasn't pleased with the fitting around the neck. I have a little bit of a bulge. This bulge is a little bit awkward even on body, so I'm going to correct this part on video so that in case you get an awkward fitting from the first instructions, you can be able to correct it using the correction that I'm going to show you on video. But all in all, I'm pleased with the general structure of what we have right now. Look at that, guys. It's pinned at the back because I haven't yet placed an elastic strand along this line. So for now, I have just pinned it at the back, but I'm very sure that I did this piece based on my client's measurements and she was able to try it on. And yeah, she looked gorgeous, especially for the lower bit. The only challenge is up here around the neckline. And before, I hadn't yet joined the upper piece onto the skirt portion. So now we can see the bigger picture of what everything looks like. Let me know in the comment section if you're loving it already. So let's go onto the desk and correct this kind of fitting around the neck. I want to raise this first and then I create the extension later on. So I'm going to unravel this bit and correct it a little bit so that it creates a perfect fitting around the neck. And then we shall come back and see the before and after. Alright guys, so I didn't like the fitting around the neckline as I had explained earlier on. So what I'm going to do is to get rid of this neckline and do some adjustments. This is optional. If you're pleased with the first version, then that's fine. But we are going to redo the neckline because it just didn't give me the fitting that I was expecting to get. So let me just undo the whole neckline and get back to the original neckline before the extension. Okay. Before the extension, let's see what we have. Okay, let's remove these. All right, so we are back to our original piece before we started creating the neckline. So what I'm going to do is to lift this area here a little bit before we create the extension towards the neck. And to do that, I am going to make a slip knot and attach my yarn into the very first stitch. This is a single crochet, by the way. So I'm going to go into the same stitch with a single and a double. Then skip the next stitch, single, double into the next. So we are just working with our original pattern until we get towards the very first corner. And I'll show you what to do once you get there, because we want to create some decreases so that we get rid of the bulge that was created somewhere around that point. But on actual body, let me first reference to one of my images on body. Actually, this is what we have. I feel like the neckline here is a bit very far from the neck. So we need to fill in this gap to come closer to the extension that we are going to create this side. So you see that? I have one single crochet and then we go to the corner here. So I am going to create a decrease. So I'm going to skip the next stitch and single crochet into the next, and then skip the next stitch and double crochet into the next. That way we have created a decrease at that point. And then we're going to continue to single, double into the next row because these are rows. Skip the next row, single, double into the next, skip the next stitch, the next row, and single, double into the next. So we're going to do this until we're almost at the next corner, and then we shall create another decrease. So we are almost at the second corner at the back of the dress. So I'll place a single here and skip the next stitch and double into the next. So we've created another decrease here. So from here you're going to continue with the pattern, skip the next stitch, single and double into the next, skip the next stitch, single, double into the next, skip the next stitch, single and double into the next. So skip the second last stitch and into the last, you're ending with a single crochet there. So let's see what we have. We have this at the moment. So what I'm going to do is to work 3 more rounds without any decreases or increases. So you're just going to make a chain of 1 and turn your work and work your stitch pattern all the way across. And we want to do that for a total of about 2 to 3 rounds in order to lift the neckline. To get rid of that hole that was on the neck. So we are working all the way to the beginning, to the end of the row. Sorry, this is not a round. What we are trying to do right now is to fill in that gap before we create the extension towards the back of the neck. Alright guys, I decided that I'll be decreasing every other row. So I did another, after my decrease row, I did a row here of plain, and now I'm going to decrease on this row. The moment I get to the corner, I create the decrease, just as we did for the very first row, and then continue with the pattern until the second corner, and then I'll create another decrease. Sorry for the confusion, this is a try and error. We're just trying to get the best fitting for our dress. So sometimes you have to play with a few stitches here and there in order to get a perfect fitting. Have you ever looked at a crochet piece and you're wondering how they went about the stitches? It's usually a gamble that you make work. You try to make it work based on the stitches that you're using. So I've created another decrease at this point, the second corner, and now I'm going ahead to work my pattern as usual. This is row 3 of the neckline shaping. So row 1 is a decrease row, row 2 is a non-decrease row, it's just a plain row, and row 3 is a decrease row. That means row 4 is a plain row. So I'm just going to go all the way across without creating any decreases. And when you feel like the coverage is just enough to get to your neck, then it will be time for you to create your extension towards the back of the neck. So row 4 is coming back towards the front, and I think that's the row that I am going to extend towards the back of the neck because it will be at the front of the dress. I hope I'm making sense. I'm trying my best to explain everything so that in case someone decides to make this piece, it's not the hardest piece that they come across, even if it looks complicated. I'm just trying to break it down so that you guys get it right. Okay, so I'm placing my last single crochet of the row, and you can see how this has moved the piece towards the neck. So it has grown it by about an inch or 1.5. Let's see. It has increased it by 1.5 inches, which is great. Now it's time for us to create the other extension. So we're going to make a chain. So this chain, I'm going to make a chain of about, let me see, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15 and 16. So I'm just going to make a chain of 16, and into the second chain from the hook you're going to place single and double. Skip the next stitch, single, double. Skip the next stitch, single and double into the next. Skip the next stitch, single and double into the next. So you're going to repeat that until you get back to the body of the dress. So this is the little extension that's going to the back, and make sure you work this at the front of the dress. It's only going to be at the front of the dress. The back is not going to have an extension. Single and double. Skip the next chain and single, double into the next. Okay, so this is what we have. Now you're going to go into the very first single crochet on the body of the dress and place a single and a double, and continue to go all the way across with your stitch pattern. Skip the next stitch, single and double into the next. So we are maintaining our stitch pattern, which is the Suzette stitch. Okay, keep working this until the end of the row, and you're going to do a total of 4 to 5 rows. So once you make it to this side, make a chain of 1 and turn your work, come back for row 2, because I'm considering row 2 because this is quite longer than what we had before. So this will be row 1 for the neck extension until you get here, and then come back for row 2, row 3, row 4 and row 5. Maximum 5 rows. I'll let you know how many rows that I ended up making in order to get my desired thickness for that extension. So you're just working plain rows all the way across, back and forth, until you get the thickness that you want around your neck, and then I'll be back to show you what to do next. Alright guys, now we have finished. I did a total of 5 rows for this thickness, and we're going to go ahead and make straps on the edges here and here. So to do that, you're going to make a slip knot and make a chain of about 50. I think 50 is enough. 3 4 5 6 7. So I have my 50 chains. Maybe let me make it 60. So 60 chains, and I'm going to single crochet across this edge of the neck extension. Just find every place where you can place a single crochet. So just like this, and then you're going to make the same exact number of chains as this very first chain. So I have 60 here, so I'm going to go ahead and make 60 chains on this side. Okay, just like that, we are done. And then you can get rid of the excess strands at the end of the chains. Okay, so this is what we have at the front of the dress. Now we go to the back and do the same exact thing and create straps that are going to tie to the straps that we just made. So you're going to you're going to first make your chain of 60. 1 2 3 all right, so I have my chain of 60 and I'm going to single crochet across the 5 rows at the back of the neckline shaping. So I'm 5 rows in and I'm going to make another chain of 60. So after my chain of 60, I'm going to make a chain of 1, cut my yarn, pull through, and get rid of the excess yarn at the ends of the drawstring or the straps. Sorry, this is not a drawstring. So you're going to have 2 on this side and 2 on this side at the back. So these are the ones going to tie around the neck, just like this. Just like that, and then this one. But for this one, we shall first tie it with the one that comes from the top of the bra cup. So we shall first tie this one, or you can just bring the strap with the bra cup with this one at the front, and then you just tie both of them at the back. And just like that, we have this ready. So I'm supposed to switch this drawstring, the one here, to something thicker. So I'm going to just make sure that this is optional. You can either do it or not do it. Depends on how thick you want your straps to be. So for me, I am switching this to something thicker, and for this strap that I am replacing with, I used a total of 4 strands of yarn to achieve a thickness, as you can see here. This is thin, but this is thick. So I'm going to just pull it through so that it can, I hope it can go through perfectly well. Okay, it has started going through. So I'm just doing a replacement for the thinner strap that I had, or the thinner drawstring. And then the moment I'm done here, I can separate the 2. And now I have a totally thicker strap at the base of my bust, because I felt like the other one was quite small and thin, so it wasn't giving me the look that I was going for. So if you want to make a thicker strap, just hold more strands of yarn and you'll be able to achieve that. You make a normal chain but using several strands of yarn. Okay, so you can see this is much thicker than what we had before. This is a bit thin. So this is what we have at the moment, and this is going to tie. If we flip our work over to the back, this is going to tie on the underbust level. So you can see how thick this piece is. It's going to tie towards the piece at the back, this piece. So it's going to be in the center back of our work. And get rid of the loose ends. Okay, so I'll be showing you on the dummy just to give you a bit bigger picture of what we're doing when it comes to the fitting. So the next thing to do is to get your elastic strand, because at the end of the day you want this piece to hold your waistline perfectly well. And so you're going to get half of this length. Remember, it's doubled because we have this side and this side. So I'm going to just get an elastic strand that just measures one side and cut. I'm leaving some excess so that I leave room for the knot that's supposed to be tied at this point and at this point. So you're going to attach your elastic strand, make a knot. You can make a double knot or a triple knot to just be on a safe side. So this is what we have. And then you're going to make another knot at this corner here on the opposite end of the drawstring, or the elastic strand, sorry. So you're going to go ahead and make a knot. So don't worry about the contrasting color of the elastic strand and our piece. I'm going to single crochet and hide the color of the elastic. So you can see how small it is. This is because once we work a single crochet stitch around, it's supposed to gather this. So you're going to grab your yarn and attach into this corner. Just attach it like that. We are going to single crochet all the way across. So I think I'll just single crochet 2 times in every single crochet from the previous row. I think that will be the easier method. So just keep single crocheting twice in every single crochet from the previous row. And when you're running out of this elastic strand, as you can see, it doesn't go all the way to the end. So when you're running out, you just give it a tug and continue to single crochet. We are supposed to make sure that this elastic strand can run all the way around the stretch between the 2 knots that we have made on top of the skirt. So you can see how our dress is gathering at this point. It's going to be like this, that's stretchy. So you can see what we have. Look at that. This is supposed to gather this area so that it creates a perfect fitting for the skirt on the upper part. So we're going to single crochet until we make it to the second knot that we just did on the opposite side of the top part of the skirt. So look what we have. All right, so we're almost coming to the end, and you can see how this has gathered that big distance that we had before. So I'm going to just wind up with my single crochet stitches. And then I'll slip stitch in the next stitch. Just find a way of slip stitching somewhere after the last stitch, and you're going to cut your yarn, chain one, and get rid of the excess yarn. I think I'll use a darning needle to hide that elastic strand. I don't know yet, but I'll make sure it's neat enough. So guys, look at this. We can already see that the fitting of this dress is going to be perfect. You see that? So we've narrowed down the waistline even further to hold and grab the waist area of our client. And I think at that point we are through. You're going to make sure you get rid of all the loose ends and make your dress as neat as possible. Find all the loose ends on your dress and get rid of them, and let's see the final look of our dress after the adjustments. Alright guys, this is how we are going to tie. You remember the strap on the underbust level, it's going to tie here. Then all the rest of the straps are going to tie here around the neck, but at the back. And now when it comes to the front, you can see how the shaping of the neckline has greatly improved from what we had before. So yeah, this is the final look of our piece. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial, guys. Make sure you give it a thumbs up if you did, and I will see you in my next video. Bye guys.